Okay, so let's dive in. We've got this pile of notes, articles, research right here, and it's all focused on some pretty big news from the wrestling world lately.
Yeah, news that definitely turned some heads, and honestly, for a lot of fans, it probably felt like it came right out of left field, even if maybe the writing was on the wall with broader company trends.
Exactly. So this deep dive, it's all about R-Truth, his departure from WWE. And just using the material we have here, the plan is to unpack how it all went down, the context surrounding it, and really take a moment to reflect on his legacy, which, let's face it, is pretty unique.
And what jumps out immediately from these sources is just how unexpected the way it happened was. No big farewell tour, no teary speech in the middle of the ring.
Right.
The news actually broke after his last TV appearance had already aired. Kind of weird.
Which takes us right to the main piece of news in all this material. R-Truth's WWE contract simply wasn't renewed.
That's the bottom line, yeah. And the sources are clear. The way it happened was, well, quiet. Like, really quiet. No press release beforehand, no final match set up. The confirmation only came out after what we now know was his final segment had already been broadcast.
So, okay, the big question then is why? And this material does offer an answer. It's framed very much as a business decision, specifically targeting some of the veteran talent.
Yeah, the reporting points towards a strategy, apparently linked to Triple H, that's about focusing on, quote, long-term value and youth.
Right.
And these sources use terms like deep cuts were being made, hitting performers who've been around for a while.
And it's laid out pretty bluntly in some of these notes. The main reason given was age. It explicitly says not attitude, not performance, just a strategic choice about where the company wants to invest going forward.
And based on what we're reading here, this wasn't just about truth. There were similar non-renewals happening around the same time.
Yeah.
Carlito's name comes up specifically alongside R-Truth in a few of these reports.
So if you connect those dots, pulling from these notes, it seems like part of a bigger picture, especially for SmackDown after WrestleMania 41, WWE's biggest show.
Yeah.
The sources suggest a real shift towards younger wrestlers. And R-Truth not being there anymore, well, this material frames it as sort of the end of an era for a certain kind of mid-card comedy act, a style that was honestly almost entirely built around him.
Which makes his final on-screen moment feel, well, kind of poignant. Looking back, it was that backstage bit, the comedy segment with John Cena. May 31st, 2025, SmackDown.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. The articles detail it pretty well. Classic Truth stuff, right? Talking to Cena, rambling about tag teams, messing up the names of the championship.
Oh, yeah, like the World Heavyweight Championship of the world, wasn't it?
Something like that. And asking about Invisible Friend matches. Just pure R-Truth.
Totally. Signature, lighthearted comedy on the surface.
Okay.
But as the sources really highlight, there's this sharp contrast. If you knew what was happening behind the scenes, that segment hit different, as one article put it. Knowing his time was up adds this layer of melancholy, maybe. His last moment became this sort of unintended final punchline.
But, and this is crucial, you absolutely can't let that quiet exit define his whole career. These sources are really strong on this point. The guy was so much more than that last segment.
Oh, absolutely. Let's shift gears from how it ended to celebrating the career itself, which this material really digs into.
Okay.
I mean, what's fascinating is how he kept reinventing himself, staying relevant across totally different eras. Like his most recent big thing, which gets a lot of attention here, was his whole involvement with Judgment Day.
Right, the storyline, the angle where he just fully believed he was an official member.
Exactly, and it provided this amazing long-running source of just pure comedy, his confusion, his misplaced loyalty, that kind of wonderful delusion he played so well.
And listen, you just cannot discuss R-Truth's legacy without spending serious time on the 24/7 championship. I mean, the number alone reported here is it's staggering. 53 times.
53. And it wasn't just about the number, right? The sources really emphasize how he did it. He apparently turned a throwaway belt into iconic content. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Made chasing this, kind of goofy title feel like real appointment television sometimes. Those chaotic segments popping up anywhere.
And the sources really credit his skills for that. Yeah. His timing, his humility, being willing to be the butt of the joke, and just his total commitment to the bit. The material's pretty clear. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone in recent years who gave more effort and creativity to something considered, well, pretty low on the totem pole.
But his impact goes way deeper and further back than just the comedy. And the sources highlight this too. They mention him being a legit in-ring threat earlier on.
Definitely. The articles specifically bring up his 2011 WWE title feud with John Cena. Remember the capital punishment match?
Oh, yeah, main eventing a pay-per-view against Cena. Think about that range from that to chasing a green belt through an airport years later. It's incredible.
And here's a piece of history that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, but it's noted in the sources. He was the first Black NWA World Heavyweight Champion outside of WWE.
That's huge.
Sure,
the
yeah.
NWA title has such a long, storied history. Being the first Black wrestler to hold that specific version of the belt, that puts his early career in a whole different light.
So for, over 20 years, this material confirms he was just consistently there, bringing charisma, heart, and this unique presence. And one detail that keeps popping up in these articles is how he never broke character.
Yeah. You knew Ron Killings, the person, existed, but on camera, always R-Truth, total pro.
And another consistent thread in these sources, his backstage reputation seems universally loved, described as one of the kindest people in the business. No ego, no drama.
That consistency, on-screen character work, and off-screen reputation, that's pretty rare, isn't it?
It really is. So let's bring this back to you, the listener. Thinking about the tone in this material, it feels kind of bittersweet, you know?
Definitely. There's all this respect, this celebration of a long, impactful career, detailed in the sources, right next to this very cold, quiet business decision to just not renew the contract.
And the way some of these sources frame the departure, it hits emotionally. Like one says it feels like another piece of childhood erased, representing the end of a specific time in WWE.
But right after that feeling sinks in, the material pushes back hard, almost defiant, saying, but you can't erase our truth?
Love that.
And these sources seem pretty convinced his impact is going to stick around. You'll hear like echoes of him in future comedy bits. You might see his spirit in other veterans grinding it out on the undercard. And ultimately people will remember how whatever he was doing, main event, comedy skit, title chase, he consistently made you care.
Yeah.
And as these sources rightly point out, making people care in wrestling, that's everything.
So looking at everything we've covered today from these notes and articles, we've sort of mapped out that quiet, business-focused end to R-Truth's really long, really memorable WWE run.
Yeah, and we've also grappled with that stark contrast, right, between the hilarious guy on TV and the somewhat abrupt, maybe even cold reality of how his time there finished.
And just to reiterate, this whole deep dive, everything we discuss, it's based solely on the source material we had in front of us.
Exactly.
So here's something to think about, drawing from all this. Considering how this material highlights R-Truth's massive impact through comedy, through making things like the 24/7 title matter, through sheer character work, even without, a recent main event title run or some big splashy send-off, what does his legacy, as presented here, tell you about what really makes someone unforgettable in wrestling?